facilities. Seeing no lights. Recognition and announcements, that'll just be the night of. And then new business, discussion of annual superintendent evaluation. Do you have, are we just going to use the same thing that we did last time?
Yes, if we can use the same, you use the same tool, and I need to know when you guys want to do the evaluation so that I can send you all of the documentation as I've done in the past, how I break down every single standard and then provide for you guys evidence of things that took place this year according to the standard. So last year we did the evaluation in July, so I sent you everything in June. If you'd like to do it in June, I can send it to you this month. It's up to you, but it's up to the board about which way you guys want to go. But I think the board has to vote on when the evaluation takes place.
There was discussion at one time about doing it in the fall because maybe that was a better time. I don't know. I think Mr. Bates talked about that. So
yeah.
I think really, we just leave it to them when they're more.
And that'll kind of coincide to another discussion coming on down when we talk about TN Ready recommendation for 17-18. So I'm sure you guys have been reading, sharing information with you guys. TN Ready was a massive failure this year. As of Friday afternoon, the Tennessee Comptroller is now involved, and we'll kind of explain all this. But if, when, how, methodology, we don't know when test scores are going to be back this year, if they're going to be back at all, now that the Comptroller's involved. So that was one of the things that board members were saying. They wanted to wait till the test scores came back to then do the evaluation. But I can't really tell you when they're going to be back at this point. And not only that, a couple superintendents are talking words like class action lawsuits. Should test scores be published? Should they come back low, possibly filing action against a state to prevent those from being published? So,
Mr. Dudley?
Thank you. Is our 10 ready scores our largest gauge of student improvement that we'll have? What other things? What I'm getting at, a large part of our evaluations of you seem to be based on student improvement.
yes, sir.
And of course, May and June we don't have any of those test results back or anything, so it's hard to gauge your job performance without any actual data to put in front of us.
Yes, sir.
So is the 10 ready scores and what else do we have that your performance could be based upon data wise?
Well, the second part of the evaluation, the quantitative part of the evaluation, is basically where Dr. Preninger calculates student growth throughout the course of the year with regards to other areas of the key scorecard, and that's where she basically marks it, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So once the school year is over, she'll begin to calculate those measures on the key scorecard, determine what kind of progress we made, and then that will be the other half of the scorecard, if you will.
Okay. Well, personally, I think our timing in the past of your evaluation or the evaluation of any of our superintendents fell at a poor time because oftentimes the board didn't have any data to gauge anything on, and so I would like to see it wait until we have those two items before us before we truly make the full evaluation.
Thanks, Mr. Dudley. Mr. Williver, per Dr. Marzak's contract, is it okay if we push it into the fall to do his evaluation, or do we need to do one every 12 months? Okay. All right. While he's looking at that,
One other thing to consider is that in the fall you'll have a new board, so it'd be difficult. I think it would have been difficult for me to do an evaluation right after coming on the board. It's difficult enough now, so I think maybe sticking with the July might be the best. I don't know. June, yes, excuse me, June.
All right, well, while Mr. Williver is looking at that, we can move on to some instruction items. Mr. Gaines, it looks like you got federal projects budget report. Do any board members have any questions about the report? Do you have something? Speak to it.
I just want to add, we did receive a preliminary allocation, and I just want to note we received an increase of approximately $80,000 in Title 1A and a reduction of $44,000 in Title 2. There was I said in your notes and in the notes to you that Central ranks 5 and our Central ranks 3 and Withorn ranks 5. That was backwards. Central ranks 5 and WMS ranks 3. We talked with our consultant, and we were able to, and rather than do straight ranking, we ranked by grade span. That allowed us to put Central at the end of the grade span, the 8th school. They still are going to receive they still receive a significant amount of money because they have, a large amount of students that are eligible. So, but that allowed us to kind of allow some of those. It wasn't a significant amount of loss of funding. There's still some loss of funding. There's still some position losses, but hopefully it'll be a smoother transition. And I do want to. We're going to come to you. Both two schools have proposed to add some behavior type facilitator positions, and as in the process we've taken the allocation. The schools have done their budgets. We have done the whole budget, and we have uploaded to the state, and it's in the process of being reviewed. They will look at those positions and make recommendations. Yes, and then we want to bring those positions to you for approval, so that it won't be additional funding because they are. So like one school won't have an interventionist, they want to have this person, but it's more for behavior more than instruction.
When you say they won't have an interventionist, does that mean like the RTI position for that particular school that we've normally funded out of Keys won't be a request for that particular school?
They in the past they may have funded maybe an interventionist or a academic facilitator in their Title I budget, and they're not going to fund that particular position. They're proposing to change that position to a facilitator type position. So, for example, at Withorn, because of their position, they received an increase in funding, so they were just able to add that position. So they're asking for a behavior type. This person will be a facilitator that'll work with teachers, but they'll also work with students, similar to our academic facilitators who work with small groups. We say generally 50% of the time they work with small groups, and then they also work with teachers the other half of the day. So this behavior person at Withorn would do the same thing. The difference at McDowell, they're requesting a person that's going to only work with teachers, so it would be more in their Title II budget under professional development. Title I budget under professional development.
Okay. Any questions from board members? So this is really just an FYI going forward for the actual board meeting. You don't need us to approve anything at this point.
No,
because there are no positions at this time.
The allocation, as you know, allocations will sometimes change. We don't generally get our final allocation till June, and once we do that, both us and special ed will do our final budgets, and then we'll bring it to you for approval.
Okay. Sounds good. We'll see no other lights. We'll go back to the contract. Okay. Okay. So it sounds like we need that stuff like now.
I'll send it out by the end of the week.
Okay. Are board members okay with that? I know we may still need to do other evaluations. I think that was a discussion that had occurred at maybe 2 a year or something like that. Mr. Dudley?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we're trying to do this one to stay in compliance with our contract, I think according to Mr. Woodward, we could add additional evaluations later on. I'd like for us to look at setting a firm period as to when we're going to do those here pretty quick.
Okay.
And that way we can have adequate notice, Dr. Marzak can have adequate notice as to when that's gonna be.
All right, sounds good. Moving on, there's a TN Ready recommendation. I don't know if anybody has any questions about it or you want to speak to it.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair Parker. I don't want to beat a dead horse to death. I know you all are aware of what has come down the pipe with the legislature and what has happened with the Tennessee State Department of Education. But basically what they're saying is that the local Board of Education shall determine whether or not the TN Ready test will count for students. And my recommendation is that it does not count this year due to the difficulties that we've had with testing. So,
Mr. Dudley?
Well, I've got a problem with that. When we have students that sit there and they're told that you need to take this test, and they look up at the teacher and basically say, tough crap, I don't have to do it, because the legislature's done said we don't have to do it. I have a problem with those students. Now, the ones that diligently sit there and did their best on the exams, and now, I don't have no problem with not counting. But when the ones that are sit there and feel like we've got our hands tied and we can't count it as part of their scores, those are the ones that I really have a problem with. And we've got to find a way. If we're going to have continued year after year to have problems with these tests, we need to find a way to get the ones that are not serious about taking the test out of the room, because all that's doing is affecting the rest of them. And so, you know, I know we can't pick and choose who we're going to probably count against, but like I say, when a student is able to tell a teacher, I'm not going to do it, you know, here's an exam that's supposed to take 4 or 5 hours, and then you know, 10 minutes, they're already asleep, or they've done wadded it up and threw it in the trash can or whatever. I've got a problem with that.
I just want some clarification. If you're in an EOC classroom and the test score is not going to count, then will your grade be just what it was up to that point, or is another test going to be given for that percentage that counts toward the final grade?
it will be just the normal grades and the exam grade.
They will
minus-
have an exam.
They will take they still take exams, yes.
They'll take the exam.
They still take exams.
Okay, so, but now some classes, that is their exam, isn't it? Isn't it? I don't know. I'm not,
Well, yeah, they would take an end-of-course test
right,
and also, yeah, exams also.
okay. End of course test, how much?
End-of-course is for the state.
I
so-
understand
so-
what it's for.
Okay.
What's the percentage it counts?
It would have been 15%.
So, and the exam then counts?
Oh, gosh, I think it's 20%?
No.
15?
It used to be
15. It's 15%.
15%. Okay. So,
Right.
okay.
Is that different? Is this like a final exam, like at the very end of the school term? And so if somebody semester exams, if somebody can exempt,
Yeah,
then then it just counts what their grade is, and they don't have to take that exam, even though there was this glitch with the TN Ready.
Yes, they could be exempt from taking the exam on the course, but not the not the EOC, of course. They
Right,
can be
but-
exempt from that, but
But they're not going to get graded on the EOC, is what we're saying, based on your recommendation, correct?
yes, based on my recommendation, it should not count for students.
Any other questions?
No, well, I'm just smiling because I think we're saying the same thing, but it's not. So you got 85% of the work that the student's done in the semester or the year, whatever it is. That's going to count if they're exempt as their total grade. Okay. If they take an EOC, then that 15% would have been EOC and still be exempt. this kind of, you know, I just didn't know how that was gonna be handled. Is that correct?
All right. If we're preparing them for college and career, I don't think you actually get to exempt your exams, though. Just saying. But that's fine. I mean, they were gonna try to take the exam. I understand that, but I think that if we're gonna, like Mr. Dudley said, I think we need to start really evaluating that, because if T and Ready, which for 3 years has been an unmitigated disaster for our district as far as getting scores back, I think that we need to figure out some way that we're truly going to make sure that we're figuring out if they really have mastered this subject. I think that was somewhat of what Mr. Dudley was saying too, about in order to be able to do evaluations, if we can't rely on T and Ready data. And I know Dr. Marzak said that y'all have scorecards that look at other things, but it's, we just, they're putting us in a really bad position, I think.
I just want to say I agree with you 100% on that. You know, one of the things that we're held to is participation rate. And so the state makes us have a 95% participation rate to ensure that we get all students to take the test. And then, of course, the purpose of the test counting is so that there are some teeth for students, so there is some accountability. But Mr. Dudley, I'll agree with you. Once they hear that that there have been glitches and it doesn't matter, they're checked out. And we almost have no power in that. It's been real difficult to get them to take the rest of it seriously. So it is a struggle. It's been a challenge, you know, and if you all were keeping up, they also announced 2 weeks before T and Ready that the English 3 and the chemistry wouldn't count for next year. For those kids who are taking it this year, they're saying, well, hey, wait a minute. If this isn't going to count next year, then why am I trying for it this year? So it's been a challenge. It's really been a challenge. I think until we have a reliable assessment that we get from the State Department, it will be difficult to get the kids to take it seriously and to work as hard as we want them to work. Our teachers are certainly working hard. I know the administrators are working hard, and I'll tell you what, our department is driving it hard. But we just have no control over what happens at the state level with all of this. And that just means that for the high school students that we just have to rely on the regular fourth quarter grades plus the exams, and that'll be all that we have. But our recommendation would be that it doesn't count for this year. Thank you.
Mr. Beaver?
Yeah, Dr. Woodard, what part of the testing is the teachers being held accountable for?
There was something that came out from the State Department that was looking at using a combination of years to look at TBOS and to mold that together, but that quickly got nixed by the legislature. So right now it does not count for teachers as I understand it. I'll let Dr. Marzak shed some light on that. Dr. Marzak, if you want to shed a little more light on that.
So basically what happened is the legislature for this year has absolved teachers, principals, school districts, everybody as far as accountability is concerned. They've amended the law that nobody is to be held accountable for test scores this year.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Sounds like there's still some questions. I don't know that we'll put that on the consent agenda unless anybody, that was the vibe that I'm getting. So we'll move on to digital learning programs, continued discussion.
So at the last meeting, board members, we had some conversation around some of the academic programs that we are currently using, and just wanted to come back around to you to see if there was any more discussion about what you'd like to keep or cut. What are your thoughts? We think that this is the appropriate time. Of course, time is ticking as far as getting the budget settled and established, and so the recommendation that we brought before you was looking at I think it was somewhere around $1.7 million was what it would cost for the academic programs that we currently have. And again, we looked at cutting Catapult, which is $284K, so Catapult will go away. We looked at cutting Next Lesson, that will go away. And after the discussion that we had at the board meeting on the 30th, I went back to my team and we had discussion about removing Mind and Dreambox. If we remove Myon, that's a savings of $115,600, $115,600. And if we remove Myon, that's somewhere around $120,000. So that's even more savings if we choose to remove those programs. All of the other programs that we have recommended are things that we feel are truly vital to the academic success of our program in the district. That would mean keeping IO Education, which is our digital dashboard, which is basically our data warehouse. That's a tool that we need. It costs about $61K. Ames Web will be the tool that we use to gather Lexile levels, et cetera. That's about $58,000. It's about $2,000 cheaper than it was the previous year. If Myon goes away, as I mentioned, that removes $120,000 out of the budget. We still feel that we need the Power School Assessment Builder. That piece is really essential in building common formative assessments for teachers. That runs about $91,000. The other piece that we think is very meaningful for us also is the Discovery Education. That's about $715,000. But again, you may choose to cut that. Again, it's at your discretion. Follett Library Services, that is our textbook inventory, how we inventory all the books and do all the ordering through the warehouse, et cetera. It's critical to the success of the schools. We have $15,000 in here for mental health and behavioral support. That is critical also. When we have students who have to leave our system and they are institutionalized for short periods of time, we have to pick up that tab. Our district picks up that tab. And so we don't have a lot of kids in that predicament, but we do pick it up. And so the number of kids who are needing mental health and behavioral support is increasing. And so we increased that by $5,000 to $15,000 total. Edgenuity is our academic platform for credit recovery, and that is at a cost of about $220,000 as well. We also have our Jobs for Tennessee graduates at $15,000. And then the last program is the call-out system, our school messenger system, which contains the internet and the call-outs, which is around $42,000. Again, our recommendation would be that we look at cutting the Myon and Dreambox to save the district a little more revenue. And again, we're also cutting Next Lesson, and we're also cutting Catapult. So somewhere with those cuts, it's a little bit more than $500,000.
Any comments from board members?
Yes,
Mr. Williver, I think you mentioned that you'd look through these contracts. Are there any issues with us deciding not to continue on with any of these particular vendors?
I don't think so. It looked like they were all set up for renewals, that you were only signed up for a term and it ran from renewal to renewal on an annual basis. What I'll do is if there are some that you decide tonight that you're leaning toward double checking or leaning toward getting rid of, I'll double check that before the board meeting. But best I can tell, they're all renewals, so I don't think there'll be any problem if you decide to cut some or all out.
I think Discovery may be the only one that may be problematic. I think we're locked into Discovery for 2 more years when I asked my team. Is that correct, Kara? We got 2 more years on that. Yeah, we've got 2 more years on that.
And what's the fee?
I think we have 2 more
terminate?
years on the 4. 2 more years of the 4, correct? Okay, so we have 2
So-
more years.
What's the penalty in the contract if we are to terminate that one? That is the biggest.
It is the
It pretty
biggest
much
chunk.
equals the other ones
It is.
collectively.
Honestly, it is. It's large. I can look at the contract and let you know. I don't know right offhand what the penalty would be, but it is the largest of all that we have.
And that amount, does that include the science tech book, or
No,
that's just for
that's just
PD?
for the PD. The science tech book would be $75,000.
Okay.
And can you
Ms. Kinzer?
refresh me how many coaches there are and their stipends and what in that with Discovery?
I'm gonna let Kara come up and speak to that.
Our partnership with Discovery Education is multi-pronged. So the 4-year partnership is twofold. One, it provides PD for all of our principals and 80 teachers. Those 80 teachers receive professional development throughout the year as well as on-site school coaching. The DE consultants work with the principal as well as those 4 teachers to have a plan for how they're going to build it out to the rest of the teachers. So last year was pretty much those 4 teachers at every school soaking up as much information as they could about how to use Discovery Ed resources, the strategies they were being taught, getting comfortable having someone come in and work alongside of them. This year they started building out to more teachers, and so it's kind of like, you know, start with 4, you partner up with someone, you grow it to 8, then you grow it to 16, and it just keeps growing. So year 3, one of the big goals is creating learning lab classrooms. So if I'm interested in learning more about a certain thing, I can go to one of my peers and see it in action. The coaches from Discovery Ed will go in alongside anyone that needs to see it modeled, and then they go back and do it with them again. The principals receive 2 half-day trainings, plus they also get 3 half-day coaching sessions. And they can talk more about that, but it's been very beneficial because they can bring in their leadership team, and they work with Mike Gorman to really build a plan of how they're going to build it out. Because Discovery is not a program. It's working to change pedagogy in classrooms, to go from that teacher-centered classroom where all of us were used to, teachers stood up before us, they gave us the information, we received it, and we moved on, to now more of a student-centered classroom where kids are going and learning. You know, if there's, I was thinking of math, you know, we don't think about math being anything but traditional. We practice it on the board and we go on. But Discovery has lots of resources to get the kids' attention. A teacher could show a quick video clip to get the kids engaged with a problem, then they go and explore. It really allows for teachers to do blended learning. I know a teacher at one school, if her kids are still not grasping a concept, she can very easily say, I want you to go check this out at home, and then come back, and they keep going with their lessons. So it's multifaceted, and change takes time. We know that it usually takes 3 to 5 years. We also know that one day of PD is not going to change the world. It needs to be sustained. It needs to be job embedded. It needs to be systematic, and Discovery Ed takes all those things into account. We have a monthly call-in with them, so if we see that things are not working well, we can change it very quickly. If there's a coach that's not working out at a school, we can very quickly try to problem solve to see, you know, is that the right fit, or, you know, how can we support them? So I know it got lumped in with digital programs, but there's only a small fraction of that cost that is for digital programming. So at the end of year 4, that $665,000 falls off, and you're only left with that streaming cost of about $58,000 a year.
Okay. I've heard good things about it. I really have, but it, once again, it's expensive. So, but you foresee in the 3rd year then that it would branch out to involve more teachers.
Yes, and you spoke about the coaches. There's going to be more intentionality with those coaches. We're 2 years in of having the cadre of PLC, PBL, and data coaches, so we're going back and looking at, okay, how can we strengthen those positions and make them better used in the schools? So, you know, it may be that PBL coaches have to do family nights. You know, I know Ms. Parker talked about, she didn't really understand all the things that Discovery Ed had to offer. I probably wouldn't if I didn't work for the school system. So having those coaches help plan nights at the schools where it's not just the great STEM activities that we want our kids engaged in, but how as a parent can you engage in that resource at home? Even with your little one, even though she's not in school, there's things that you could find on your boy's accounts that would be beneficial for her. So it's still just that building the knowledge out of our teachers, also sharing that knowledge with parents and getting a better understanding of all the capabilities. I mean, they have over 1 million resources housed on that one site.
Thank you. Dr. Marzak, we'd talked in some of our other budget meetings about not cutting a program too soon, that oftentimes we never keep a program long enough to fully see its total benefits. Is this one of those that you feel like that we need to give it more time?
Talking about Discovery Education?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
To be honest with you, would like to see us fund them all, because for some of them we're only into year 2. So because what happens is when you pick a different program, you then have to do all new professional development. People have to relearn how to use the program. We have to learn how to integrate it into normal practice, and we basically reset back to 0 from where we were. If you continue to move forward, you get deeper implementation, you get deeper work. It now becomes a part of the culture and a part of what you do every single day. So moving forward, like going back to what I said at the last meeting, there is no one perfect program. Pick one, implement it, and move forward. Do the best you can with it. That's the kind of the key action.
But with our budget situation being
Yeah.
what it is, I don't think you feel that we can keep funding 100% of the programs.
Well, kind of going back to what we talked about at the last budget meeting. It's either going to the county commission and asking for what we need, rolling back initiatives, or start to right size the district. Those are the 3 choices that we're going to have before us, and we'll talk about that more tomorrow night.
Yeah.
But there's definitely going to need to be some tough choices made this year, because we're either going to continue to move forward, or we're going to stop and stand still for a little bit.
Well, I mean, my choice is always going to start with option number 1, telling the commission,
Yes, sir.
county commission, what we need, and then, so, all right, thank you.
And we're seeing, as we'll talk tomorrow night, we're seeing examples across the state of that. I don't know if you saw what happened in Metro Nashville. They sent their budget to Mayor Briley, $45 million increase, and they got 5. Williamson County got a 4.5% increase, but they still have a $10 million deficit that they're not sure what they're going to do. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens regardless.
Well, and with our fund balance, we don't have money really to
Agreed.
rely upon.
Yes, ma'am. Agreed.
So we do have to make some of those tough decisions. While we look at Discovery Ed, can you guys also get for us, I know when these teachers are out for professional development, we have sub-costs as well. Can you get for us what that is for an entire year for our district? Because this cost of this program is not $715,000 when you add that in.
So one of the things that we've really encouraged is our coaches are allotted a certain amount of days. For them to come out of the classroom when the Discovery Ed coaches are coming to work with them is to push in. And so some of the schools have done like a floating sub. So it might be that the consultant works with me, and then I come out for like my planning period and possibly a short amount of time, but one sub covers those 4 teachers in a day instead of having 4 subs.
But
so-
this past year and the year before, has it not been 4 subs?
And so, I mean, we know that we'll have, and not all of our champions require a sub because some of them don't have to have one. We know we'll need max 560 subs for the PD. But as far as the 10 on-site coaching days, we can get more creative so that we're not. But that's one of the things that we do is I come to Dr. Woodard and say, here's the sub cost, max amount for this program. And then we've talked about how we can cut back. We've talked about reducing some of the coaching days allotted to those teachers, also working with the principals of how we can strengthen that with not using so many days.
But y'all can get the actual cost of what we've spent over the last 2 years in subs for this
Yes.
particular program. That'd be helpful. With regards to Power School, is that a program that, I know you mentioned the common formative assessments, is that something that students need a computer in order to be able to complete, or is that done on a paper system? How is that?
Power School was designed to mimic more like TN Ready. It has the different test item features, but you don't have to do it on a computer. There's actually, you can make it a PDF paper copy, and then teachers have different options of how they can scan them and upload. So the scores can still be on the
Tabulated.
dashboard online, but it's preferred for kids to be on a device, but they don't have to be.
How many, can you look to at how many how many teachers are using that option? Because with our system not being one-to-one, to me, Power School, as I understand it, is not something that is beneficial for some teachers because they don't have enough devices to pass. I mean, if they have 5 devices in their classroom once a week, it's just not beneficial for them to use that program. So I'm curious how many know that they can use the PDF option and how many are choosing to take advantage of that. Because again, 91,000 is a lot. And when I went to TSBA, I know that somebody from the State Department mentioned that they have assessments that you can do on their site as well. And I mentioned to them that we had Power School, and they were like, that's 91,000 you don't need to spend, was essentially what the person that I spoke to said. Now, obviously, that's her opinion, and, she's going to push what, her program. I understand that. But hers was free, and I love free, especially when we're talking about all these essentially overdrafts on our account at this point. So, and then for IO, I know that's our scorecard. Is that just a fancy Excel spreadsheet, or is that like an actual? Because when I look at it, it kind of looks like a fancy Excel spreadsheet. But I know we have a data person that I think is very capable of doing that type of work.
It really is a pretty neat tool. IO, basically, we had a tool in a previous district where I worked called the data warehouse. And so as an administrator, I can go into that data warehouse and find all of the assessments that kids are taking. I can find all the ACT scores. Everything that a kid had ever done is housed in one place, and you can go and find what you need. And so she is building that tool, building that system, feeding the data. We're getting the data fed into that, so it becomes basically a data warehouse for administrators and for teachers. It allows you to see students. One of the things that we're focusing on in our county is subgroup performance. If we look at the performance for our African American students and with our special ed population and ELL population, we've really been focusing on those particular groups. And so you're able to go into that tool and actually see who those students are, and then again, program your interventions so that you can help those students to move forward. So it's a pretty neat tool. And then I'll be honest, cost-wise, at about $60,000, that is a cost, but it is nowhere near the level of some of the other programs that we do have. Going back to Dr. Marzak's point earlier, sure, we'd love for you to fund all of these, but I know where we are, okay? And if I had to offer something up to you, which I feel that's kind of where we are, if I had to offer something up to you, I think reasonably it would be mine and Dreambox, just to be honest. And of course, we're cutting Catapult again and cutting Next Lesson. And again, whatever else you see fit, we're all ears, we're open, so.
Well, and Catapult was actually something that we funded out of the Keys budget, correct?
Correct.
So it doesn't really
Correct.
help us not go over our,
Well,
on
I
our
guess-
GP budget.
So let me explain that. Let me go deeper. Catapult is something that we need. We do not have a severe behavior school here in Murray County for kids who need that kind of a service. And so they provided severe behavior intervention for students who have that kind of a need. That means that we have to be creative and find some other way to address the needs that those specific kids have a cheaper way. And I'm working with a team now to kind of see if we can do that in a different way. But we don't have an SBI setting. We have at least 3 schools, full dedicated schools like that in Nashville where kids who had severe behavior issues could go. Catapult was kind of that school within a school. When you take that away, you have to find a way to provide interventions for the kids who need the most severe behavior kind of therapeutic interventions. And again, so we need it, I'll be honest. But again, can we afford it? No. And so that means we have to get creative and see if we can fund it a different way, or see if we can provide similar behavior support for kids that won't be as expensive. And that's what we're looking to do. So we're working on that, and we're also going to come to you as we progress in the budget season about our proposal for that and what it's going to look like moving forward, because we have to provide the proper support for that school. Otherwise, I fear that the discipline issues at that school will continue to mount, and the admin team will spend so much time with the disciplinary issues at that school that they won't be able to get to instruction like they need to. And we know we have to make some real instructional shifts at that particular school. So that's why I mentioned it, because again, we're not asking for it back this year. We'd like to have it back. If it were Christmas, we'd ask you for it back again, but we know where we are. we're being sensitive to that. And again, that's one of the things that we felt like we had to offer up and get rid of, realistically being sensitive to where we are with the budget, respectfully.
Well, and I'll just ask one other thing. From a curriculum standpoint, I have a hard time funding some of these programs, even like Discovery Ed. While I've heard great things from teachers that have participated in it, I have a hard time with that, knowing where we are from a curriculum standpoint. And you know, I feel like we have a gap there. And before you can run, you've got to be able to walk, and we're not walking in certain areas. And so I just want to make sure that we're addressing that before we start doing kind of an add-on. Is how I look at it. Do you need this to be voted on in May, or can we still have more information before the May meeting?
I will say, Chair Parker, the sooner the better, but I don't want to rush the board. I know this is a decision that's going to require you all to really take your time. It's a big decision. And so
And it's going to be, I think Ms. Kinther just mentioned, it'll be part of the budget process.
it will be. And also, I think you all would like to have everybody here around the table when you do have the deeper discussion about it. But again, we have the usage of each of the programs for you. It's listed here, so you can see what the usage looks like. And ultimately, we just like to have, like to know which way you all are leaning, and we'll support whatever you decide, respectfully.
Any other questions from board members on this?
I don't have a question, but I am curious how parallel tied into this. Why were we talking about parallel?
Catapult?
I mean catapult. I'm sorry I'm late, but I'm curious where this was tied
We
in.
would just, that was one of the programs that we're not bringing back for the 18-19 school year.
Thank you.
All right. Do y'all want to continue this discussion at the board meeting when we have everybody here, or do y'all want to revisit this just during the budget process in the next?
I think we should revisit in the budget process.
All right. All right, sounds good. See you then,
And many more.
for some of us. We'll move on to monthly financials. Does anyone have any questions regarding the monthly financials? I guess there's not any attachment yet. I meant for budget amendments. I was sorry. Let me skip around then. Any questions on the employer contribution rate certification?
What about the private ed?
I'm gonna come back to it. I figured that one will take more time.
Well,
All right, so I think we can move that to the consent. Any questions on the budget amendments? All right, seeing no lights, we can move those to consent as well. Now we'll move back to the private act. I figured this will take a little bit more of our discussion.
Are we just, we don't have a choice, do we? I mean, this is, we're not doing this.
No, we're not doing this. Mr. Dudley, I know you've been on the board the longest out of all of us. I know this is something that's come up before. Can you provide any insight as to, what the thoughts were before?
Yeah, as was pointed out, this is, the county commission has looked at this several different times in the past 10, 12 years. But this time it's made it further than it ever has before. My understanding, the legislature did pass a bill which would allow the county to go under this act, and the governor did sign it. So I think what the school board has done in the past was basically just send our position to the county commission, stating whether we agreed with it or whether we did not agree with it. And so I think that's about the most we're gonna be able to do is just, take a vote and see what our position as a full board is, and then maybe, have somebody, come up with a letter, or whatever it's called, to go, to carry to the commission. Personally, I'm not in favor of it myself. I would like to see the county keep control of what finances they currently do, and then let the school system continue dealing with our finances. Although with the problems that we've had in the past 2 years, I can certainly see some concerns. But hopefully with us, planning to have all the kinks worked out of our system, I would like to basically state my opposition to rolling over to the commission on this. But like I say, if it comes down to it, it's probably gonna be out of our control.
Do you know when they're gonna be voting, the commission taking it back?
So first round is Thursday night at the admin committee at 4:30. I was planning on attending, but it will be at the end of the month for the regular county commission meeting.
Were you there when they voted to send it to the legislature?
No, ma'am, no. I
Okay.
found out after the fact.
Do you not regularly check their agendas? I thought Miss Stevenson had said she sent you stuff on it.
Stan, do you remember? I don't remember getting anything ahead of time. No. No.
And typically what she does is she doesn't send us their agenda. She sends us a request for what we would like to place on their agenda. So we typically, and their agenda is not always posted online for the administrative committee. It usually is for the budget committee and the county commission, but not always can you find the administrative committee because they post them online, agenda posted online. Because I often go look because that's the one we report to.
Right.
Generally can find that when we get there.
Okay.
I will just mention one thing, Dr. Marzak. Their meeting this month is the 21st, which is the same night as this. So that it's my understanding that this would walk through the process of admin budget and then be voted on for final approval by the county commission on the 21st. So I just throw that out. Somebody mentioned making a vote here. I think that would be, they would be making their vote that same night.
Right.
My comment to it is the 81 Act, is the way I understand it, included in the management board 5 people that would manage funds, all of the funds. If somebody can tell me if I'm right or wrong, okay? But they have written it so that it's not the superintendent, the only person from the school board that would be on this management board would be one person from Murray County Schools. The act was written to be the superintendent, but they changed it to be the chairman of the board. In speaking when we went to TSBA in the fall and talked with a superintendent who this is like in his area, and he said it's very difficult to get something done. You have to go and get a PO at that office and go through all those hoops before anything is done. So I'm very opposed to this, and I'm hoping that they will realize that we're trying very hard to right the ship. That I think this came up after the first budget, the auditors in the first one, and I think that this board is trying very hard to right the ship. And hopefully that they will see that. And so I would hope we'd make a very strong statement as to moving forward, that finances and the finance department is a priority to us, and making sure that all of these payroll issues and all those things are taken care of, and that we will not be seeing this again. So I don't know if we need to vote on it. But if we're not meeting till the same night they're going to vote on it, that's kind of bad, isn't it?
could we turn one of our work sessions into a
Especially call.
voting meeting where we could discuss this and vote on it in time to still allow a letter to be composed and all. That's what I'd sort of like to have happen if we can.
Maybe the 15th. I think that was a tentative work session that was listed for the budget on our calendar.
Yeah, right, you could add to that agenda.
Okay. Okay. Do we want to do it on the 16th? All right.
That would be time enough to get a letter.
Sure.
I just wanted to add one thing to it because it's kind of related. I'm moving forward with bringing people in to interview for the vacant positions, although I'm having some angst about it because I'm having to tell them that this is uncertain at this point and that they may not have a position. So I don't want anyone to leave a good position and come and then find they don't have one. So, you know, as I find out more, I'm keeping them up to date. I'm moving forward with the process, but being very honest, so I may not end up with any candidates. You know, if someone's unemployed, it might be better than that.
Right.
But just to give you an update on that.
Is the county reaching out to the people that we have in our finance department right now? Because I know
I had put a call in to Mr. Lukonen today, and, well, actually, I emailed him, and we missed phone calls, but I had asked him for some direction on how he saw the transition happening, if it was passed, like how would the transition work, and what number of employees would he end up, you know, in proposal of having in that office, and what percentage of them would be school employees, and what process would our employees have as far as an opportunity to apply for a position, or how would that work? So I've reached out for that information. I don't know that he knows yet, but at least get it out there.
are you trying to coordinate with him as far as how this act would go into effect, or?
Yeah, I reached out today to get with him, just knowing this was coming up Thursday and then at the end of the month, so.
do you know what the time period is for full implementation of the
I talked to Mary Ann Dursky in the past when this came up when I first got here, and she said that, actually before she went to the state, her county was going through this. And she said it ended up, they did go forward with it, but it was like an 18-month transition. Because it was just a, you know, a huge thing. I mean, you mentioned it with our payroll being the size it is and compared to theirs, and just the amount of spending, smaller expenditures, but lots of them compared to, I'm sure, what they're used to handling. But I think they have a pretty decent sized staff right now for their size. So I just was curious as to what they planned on adding or how that would work. So.
Sounds good. Any other questions from board members on this particular act? All right. We'll move on. Policies. We've got the one there for final adoption. Any questions? And this was the nepotism policy. Memory serves me correctly. Any questions?
You're just doing 1108.
Mm-hmm. That was one that got approved at the last meeting. And then we don't have any specific ones on the required amount of time, but then there was discussion. I think we actually had said that we were also going to have discussion about the zero tolerance for that particular one. We want to have that discussion now. Mr. Dudley?
Well, I know staff disagrees with me, but I still believe that we ought to send messages without giving any possibility of a misunderstanding that a student making threats to use firearms as part of, well, firearms or knives or anything as part of a causing problems at our schools. We need to show 100% that that's not going to be tolerated. And I think the way it is, if a student has a aspirin on his person, that's a zero tolerance event. But yet a person making a threat to use a firearm is not a zero tolerance, and so I still got a problem with that not being included in our policy.
Mr. Dudley, do you want to get like the additional language that you want it to be a zero, under the zero tolerance for that, and then we can just add that to our policies to vote on the 21st, I think. If
Yes.
that,
That would be number 5, if I remember, wasn't it? Number
Yes.
5, that we add that. I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Dudley. I think in this day and age, a threat it creates fear, chaos, apprehension, and if there's no consequences to it, it's gonna happen, and I don't think it's acceptable behavior at all, so I agree with him.
all right, we can have that added for the 21st. We'll move on to dress code, and I assume that's why. Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
4.33, 4.34, budget amendments and the required contribution code.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go through that?
Yes,
I think we're on consent.
they are.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Dress code proposal. I assume this is why all the principals are gracing us with their presence tonight.
If it's from them, who did you all meet and make the changes? How did these changes come about? That's
So going back to the March board meeting, asked to bring this back in May. So principals were tasked with meeting with people at their schools, teachers, students, parents. I also solicited input from the teacher council, the PTO council, and the student council. We met about 2 weeks ago, compiled all the information together. That was sent out to the principals to ensure that this is the language that they wanted to use for the policy. And nobody had any revisions or any changes. So This is from the cadre of principals across the district as far as the language and how they want it to be worded.
Mr. Dudley?
Thank you, ma'am. Well, from our 2 meetings we held out at Central, dealing with rezoning, it's evident that some of the principals, administrators, as well as the students think that all these changes have already been passed. It looks like from what I saw at Central that we've done dropped all of our dress code regulations and are not going to no longer enforce any of it. I'm opposed to these changes. I know that's going to upset some of the principals, but you know, I think we had done away with a lot of our issues and problems we had when we had the dress code before we started making all the changes. And you know, some of the sites I saw, you know, it shouldn't be seen on school properties. Some of the clothing, we're already allowing students to wear clothing that has rips and tears all over it with no cloth covering beneath it. And I think when some of the changes just don't make sense. And you know, if the principals don't want to make control of their schools, in my opinion, they need to go further. So I'm opposed to any of these changes.
Any other comments from board members? Mr. Beer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Mr. Dudley. You know, you can go to these schools and it seems that, you know, the dress code has already been dropped. And so, you know, I think we need to bring it back in and, you know, whatever we need to do to bring it under control is what, you know, we need to do something, because this and what they're wanting to change is just, I just don't agree with it.
Ms. Bowers?
I have a little bit of a different view. I'll respect y'all's. I don't have any problems with these changes. As someone who dresses kids or buys clothes or sees what's in the store in their department, I'm really not opposed to this. However, what I am opposed to is the fact that currently, when I stop in schools, it absolutely isn't being adhered to, the current dress code. So that's what I have a problem with, that our administration is allowing carte blanche in schools. However, there are some schools that do adhere to it. I had a daughter that they threatened to pull out of testing. She was sitting in the office crying at the time it was supposed to start. My husband went up there with his tape measure that he wears at work. It was 2 inches from her knee. And yet, that's how we got to spend our morning. So I would appreciate if our administration would hold buildings accountable, or just let everyone get on the same page, please.
Mr. Dudley?
I mean, I agree. Some of the sites I saw out at Central, instead of being 2 inches above the knee, it was 2 inches below another area that I don't want to mention. And there was students with loose fitting tops. Those days were quite windy, and then so their loose fitting tops would blow up and uncover everything underneath it, and all. So I just, like I say, we have a difference of enforcement, but right now it's definitely not being enforced at all.
I'm just laughing because it was an end of course testing day when we were there, and I'm thinking I didn't see any students, so I don't know, you know, exactly what, but I just have to disagree from a teacher who had to adhere to the strictest dress code ever. Felt like it took up so much of my time just checking to see if they'd put that nose ring in, or they had a belt on, or, you know, measuring and that sort of thing, when all I wanted to do was get my students going and teaching. And there are certain things that I would never approve that is done, and you know, young girls and their clothing and that sort of thing, they're very distracting, and I agree if their skirts are too short, that's very distracting. But I don't think there's anything here as long as it's adhered to and the principals adhere to it, I don't object to any of it. And I'll check with my granddaughter. I did see that day.
I'm curious from administration, I mean, I know you guys are in the schools. Are they, I mean, is our dress code as it's currently stated, is it being enforced at all of our schools?
Did you mean school at Man, or you mean central office at Man, or
I mean,
School admin?
whoever.
do we have any principals that would like to shed some light on this issue?
And let me just say, for elementary, I don't really think that we're worried about you guys. I mean,
Any middle school or high
I mean,
school
if you want to
principals that
speak
like
to
to
it, but
speak
I
to
just,
this?
yes.
Please come up, so we want to maintain decorum, so please come on up.
I just have to say, for elementary at my school, when I have chronic absenteeism as high as it is, I am very, it's not that I don't follow the dress code, it's just that I'm not going to send them home for having a graphic t-shirt on. I'm going to go to my clothes closet and pull out a Highland Park t-shirt and slip it over that one. If they've got too short of shorts on, we're going to change them out. It's not that I don't follow it. So what happens sometimes is when they go back to the car rider line at the end of the day, they've changed clothes, and other parents don't realize that's not what they had on all day. All right? Because I just honestly am glad they're there. And to be perfectly honest, with the poverty that I have at my school, they can spend 50 cents for a t-shirt at a garage sale or at Second Time Around, I mean, not Second Time Around, but you know, the Family Center, secondhand store, a lot, even easier than going to Walmart. And so, to be honest, the graphic t-shirts is my biggest complaint, because I don't see anything wrong with the cute little big flower shirt or whatever on there. But if they've got a tank top on or there's something, they go to my clothes closet, we slip a Highland Park t-shirt on, and we go on. That's how I handle it.
Anyone else?
I would like to respond to her. Can I just want to say I want to say thank you for adhering to the dress code and for using logic. Thank you.
I'm gonna scoot this back because I have a loud voice. I don't. Okay, at my school, we adhere. I mean, I'm pretty strict on dress code. Now, for my population, it's different than Kelly Myers's. So my clientele of people do adhere to it. They really do go out of their way to adhere to the dress code that we have. But I'm like with Kelly. It's, if you want to wear a Mickey Mouse on your shirt, wear a Mickey Mouse on your shirt. I mean, they're 5 years old in kindergarten. So that part is not the part. Yes, if they're too short, I will call home and have them bring another change of clothes. We do have a clothes closet. Sometimes I go in there. Sometimes we don't have the clothes because we've run out, or we'll change our clothes out. But a lot of times I'll call and the parents are like, I am so sorry, and they'll bring them an extra change of clothes. But for the most part, ours do adhere to that dress code. But what I hear from parents is, you know, they do try to do those patterns and those kinds of things, but they're like, well, you know, if they could wear a unicorn on their shirt, I understand. They just wear a unicorn on their shirt. So, thank y'all.
Mr. Dudley?
And I think this board has sort of agreed that when it comes to the elementary schools, that we're willing to be more tolerant there than we are. But when you get to the middle school and the high school level, you know, those students are old enough to know that there's a dress code in effect, and you know, they may not totally agree with it, but we have said it because of certain problems we have had in the past, and then we want to prevent some of that. So like I say, I'm more lenient and tolerant towards elementary schools than I would be.
Ms. Farah, you want to speak to the middle school?
Well, since I'm the only representative for middle school, I will. What you just said, Mr. Dudley, I think that's the issue that we're running into because it's two different dress codes. So when they transition to the middle school, 5th grade, it takes about 6 weeks for them to change over to the new policy of the dress code. As far as middle school too, you have, in physical sizes, you have small kids that are 5th grade, and then you have 8th graders. So when you start talking about dress code and you talk about, you know, the tights and they're really loose on someone that's 3'2", and then you have the same thing on somebody that's 5'1", I mean, you know, you start getting into all those inconsistencies. So personally, we did a survey and we had around 253, and we sent it out to our parents, we sent it out to teachers, students, anybody that wanted to take it. And the thing that we're finding is just the inconsistency. You know, we can follow it all day long. We do 1-minute dress code checks, but then our teachers don't like it because it's taking away instruction. So, you know, and it depends on sometimes how a teacher feels. You know, some teacher may say this is not appropriate, and, you know, and we try to follow and be consistent. We can say be consistent all day long, but again, it's just how maybe somebody's feeling. We have a lot of transient students that come in that don't know dress code and then have to take a while for it, you know, and then that stops our time because I'm meeting with parents constantly, and, you know, then teachers again, some of them just come and they just want to teach the kids. So, you know, like I heard from my teachers, that, you know, as long as, you know, it's appropriate, they're not seeing anything, they just want to instruct. Because right now, you know, our scores and, you know, just trying to get kids to be successful is their main goal and main priority. So a lot of times they do have to concentrate more on dress code, and it's frustrating to our teachers.
Mr. Dudley?
But when we don't enforce it at the middle school level, the reason we were tolerant with elementary schools is because that's what the administration wanted. That's what the teachers of those students wanted. They said we can't be too hard on these kids because they don't know any better. But if we don't enforce it, the rest of it at the middle school level, when they get to high school, they're certainly not going to comply with it. And so that's part of our problem also. You know, in my opinion, when they cross over that middle school line, you know, it's time for them to put aside some of the items for children younger than them, but it's time for them to start accepting responsibility and becoming adults. And you know, I see what you're saying, but I think that is causing some of our problem at the high school level.
And like I say, for our dress code too, I think it's just like what Ms. Massey and they were saying, that, you know, if they have like Southern style on, or I mean, it's just not, you know, we don't see where that's an instructional, you know, problem when they have those kind of tops on, or, you know, graphic tees or something. So
Can I just say though, I think that, and this is really to all the principals, not just to you, but I think that you're bringing up a problem, and a solution is available for that. You know, Southern style t-shirts, it doesn't really bother us. Appropriate t-shirt, like that's the revision that's made in here. But I think where Mr. Dudley's frustrated is it's May, you know, and we've had that policy for an entire year, and that wasn't brought to us. So, you know, for us, you know, y'all are taking your time tonight. We take our time to go through policies. We just want them to be followed. If that's what we as a board have decided, you know, we're not trying to be authoritarian or anything, and we don't really want you guys to be authoritarian. We want to work with y'all, and that's why it helps for y'all to bring this information back to us. But bringing it to us in May, quite frankly, when you know that there's been a problem all year long with Southern style t-shirts, and I agree, I don't have a problem with it. But that's a problem that we have, a communication problem. So, and we're not there every day, so we don't know. And so we kind of have to rely upon staff to bring that information to us. Anybody, I think Dr. Jackson's the only one here for high school. We've got unit schools too. I'm sorry, and then we also have unit schools too. Couldn't see.
Yeah, there you go.
Unit schools are represented. I may be the only outright principal here. Points made about outright high school principal. I apologize. And thank you for your comments that you made about teaching. I know exactly what you mean. You know, so much time we just get caught up into the trivialness of it. A lot of my teachers feel the same. However, as a principal that gives a whole heck of a lot of school tours, the expectation is that you look presentable, you know, and we are representing a certain image. So that does not fall on deaf ears. I give students shirts, out of my own college shirts, out of my own closet, to ensure, that our kids are kind of living up to those standards. And we do fall at times, in terms of a city with a median income of $16,500. So we share those same kind of struggles, but I understand about towing that line and making sure that we represent an image, and we are sandwiched right next to a county that is much more affluent and believes they are a bit better than, and I'm constantly trying to get my students, to raise their expectations and to raise the level of their own eyesight. So does not fall on deaf ears. When we've got ripped holes in jeans, that go all the way up the thigh, that's a problem, and we address that problem as it is. But those are usually case-by-case basis. And one thing that I have learned, taking a school-wide issue versus a student issue. We deal with student-by-student issues on dress code, but don't have a school problem with that. But I understand my brethren in Spring Hill and Columbia with much bigger student bodies that face larger issues. I was here to support them tonight for that because I've been at a school with those kind of issues. So I do support it and do understand where these concerns come from. Thank you.
Does anybody want to speak from the unit schools? I would think they would have even more of a difficult time transitioning.
I would love to hear the unit school perspective, Chair Parker.
Wonder who that be?
Actually, you might be surprised. We have the same issues as the standalone schools. In my building particular, the issues that I have are the Under Armour sweatshirts. So do I want to struggle with the child for that, or do I want to keep them in the class getting instruction? We do call home. And in high school, we have, our boys want to go buy the 5-pack of T-shirts at Walmart instead of wearing a collared shirt. Do I personally have an issue with that? No, and I'm sure you don't either, but that's what they like to do. So those are the issues we fight there. I did have a group of middle school girls this year who tried to stage a dress code protest resistance, put it on Snapchat, so that was sent to me. The next morning they were in my office. Anybody that was not in dress code was sent to the practice gym, because their thought was, she can't put everybody in ISS, but she can. She just moved it. So those that had phones were allowed to call home, and parents brought in clothing, and it turned out we only had 2 or 3. And then I talked with all of them about the best way to affect change and used it as a learning opportunity. So that's what I face at my building.
Thank you.
Miss Kathy may have something different.
Well, instead of students putting things on Snapchat, because we do follow the dress code, parents put it on Facebook. That's what we're dealing with. We follow the dress code, and parents blast us because their child has on a T-shirt that is not dress code appropriate. So, I mean, we're following it. The transition is not hard for us as far as K through 4, they know what they're supposed to do. 5 through 12 know what they're supposed to do. We just have some students that try to get by with it. But we are following it.
Anything else from the board on dress code? Mr. Beaver, I'm sorry. It's yours.
Thank you, ma'am. You know, one of the things that I think that we're, our prime objective is the school system is trying to educate the kids and preparing them to step out into public where that they're going on job interviews, preparing to go out into the workforce. And if they get used to just coming to school anyway and every way with slit pants, I see here where they want to be able to pierce the nose. You know, somebody's going to put a bone in their nose. And you know, is that appropriate for, you know, the workforce? And that's what I thought we were training these kids for, you know. And so, you know, I think we need to have some kind of strict code and adhere to it.
I was on the board when we interviewed our superintendent, and the repetitive line that was used was systemic and systematic. It's just got to be systemic and systematic, systemic and systematic. And when I go in different schools and I see that the dress code is followed at different levels, it's just not systemic and systematic. So I really had an expectation was very clear in the interview, and it's not where we are today. I personally was sold on that phrase, so I'm very disappointed that we are not systemic and systematic. And, you know, I give my time to these meetings consistently, whether it's budget, policy. You know, we're at work sessions now, but prior to this year, we were spending time in budget meetings and in policy meetings, and yet the policy and the budget that we set are not adhered to. I have a huge problem with that. There's a reason why we're a board and we vote and we make the rules, and when they're not adhered to, I have a huge problem with it.
I'm speaking tonight from being here at Horace O. Porter. For those of you that don't know, the dress code upstairs is more stringent than the one that the county has. The kids have to wear khaki pants, the navy shirt, belt. I mean, they have to be in dress code to get in the door. So it is being followed here. Now, at Northfield Academy, when you talk about students in the workplace, I'm preparing these kids for the workplace. And I do have kids that work. I have 2 right now that have children that are working the 3rd shift. They come into me at 7 a.m. wearing the clothes from their job. Now, does it meet dress code? No. But they've just worked a 12-hour shift. So they come into me, we work with them 3 or 4 hours, they go home, rest a little while, then they go back to work that night. Now, is that, you know, are they following the dress code that you set? No, but they're wearing their work uniform, and I feel like that's what we're preparing them for, is the workplace. Now, is it rips all in it? No, it's a uniform from their job, but it doesn't really meet dress code. So, you know, you've got to look at it from both sides. You know, you can't say, oh, you must wear this. We're preparing you for a job, but yet you can't wear your uniform from your job. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there too, that it might be a situation where they are, you know, in a work uniform.
My theory in teaching and in life is that common sense must prevail.
Yes, ma'am.
And when it comes to children and issues like that, common sense must prevail. And that's all.
But if you were to walk through there and see them in their work uniform, you might go out and think, well, they're not enforcing the dress code here. But they're in their work uniform.
Well, then I'm there for the wrong reason.
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
if they've been working and doing that, and they're there trying to get their credits and get their GED or whatever complete their education, then if I'm coming looking for that, I don't need to be there.
Right. Just wanted to let you know. So if you do walk through Northfield and you see a kid who's wearing, a couple of them that have on the full coveralls, because that's what they've had on all night at their job, you know, they're not conforming to dress code, but you have to use common sense, and that's what we do.
Well, this is the first time the dress code here at Horace O. Porter, our alternative school, and Northfield's been brought up. And I'm perfectly willing to look. I know here at Horace O. Porter, she says they're going above and beyond our dress code, which is great. I applaud that. But as far as creating a dress code for the Northfield, I'm willing to consider that, and nobody has ever brought a different dress code to us for the Northfield deal, and so, you know, I'm willing to look and consider a dress code for that specific school.
Well, I agree. I'm fully support these kids that are working hard, wearing a common sense attire, but I appreciate the rapport that we are having with teachers who are telling us what the problems are, but if we have a policy, we need to implement that into policy and then expect it to be followed. But I'm all about common sense, and I'm all about taking feedback, but if we're going to have a policy, we need to adjust it as needed, and then we need to adhere to it. And I think that's a reasonable expectation.
right, seeing no other lights, we'll move on to zoning facilities. Looks like we've got our standard reports from ESA and from Hewlett Spencer and Bell. Any questions on those? I think Mr. Hewlett was here. Is there anything that you want to say, Mr. Hewlett? We don't want to, about those.
I missed an opportunity to speak. She wanted to know if you wanted to speak.
Oh, it's nice to see you unless you've got questions. I'm just here. I went by both schools today earlier, and Jamie and I were there Thursday before that, but they're going full speed ahead.
Mr. Dudley?
We're still on schedule and still on budget, correct?
No. We're on budget, but not on schedule.
How far behind on schedule? Or can the
Well,
time be made up?
You know, it really doesn't matter now. Making that up, we've got lots of time to make it up.
Okay.
We got behind schedule on Columbia Central. We were behind schedule on Marvin Wright Elementary the whole time we were working on Marvin Wright Elementary. We were behind schedule, right up until the day the children were coming, so.
So I guess maybe a better way to phrase it, do you have any concerns that you cannot handle?
I have no concerns. Just happy to have the opportunity and glad we've got a really good team.
Thank you very much.
Is that all? Are you done?
That's
with
it.
me?
We're done with you.
I'm gonna stay around a little bit.
Okay.
Just in case.
Next, we have the train report. Everyone should have had a chance to review that. Any questions related to that? Looks like Randy's here to answer any questions we might have about that. If not, we can move those all to the FYI. Project cost report. That's your baby, Stan.
Unless you all have questions. It's, I will tell you, I'll just mention them. I want to talk just a little bit when we get to come at some of these bids. Even though we've got a little less than $3 million left, we really are pretty much out of money. Unless the board wants to reallocate those funds from what they were allocated for in the report. And I'll tell you why. The bulk of that, $2 million, a little over $2 million, is allocated to 2 schools, McDowell and heating system in Hampshire, which we've kind of been waiting on. The rest of it is in little bitty pieces and parts here and there, and as we're trying to we're trying to do as much as that we can with the maintenance department, but as we've tried to bid and we've shared with you all over the last couple of months, those little pieces and parts, we can't anybody bid on it. So we may need to go back. There is some still allocated for some HVAC work that Train's still doing some engineering on. We expect to get some reports soon. But some of it, we may just need to give up on those little pieces and parts and lump them together and do some things. You know, when you take all that, we're talking about $500,000 or $600,000, and I know that sounds like a lot of money, but when we get into doing building things, it's really not. So we may, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about paving, what we ran into on that, because that was some of the things on the report. We may just have to lump some of that together and just see if we can say, for right now, we're not going to try to, and I'll just pick on one, replace the windows at Santa Fe Unit School, which really need to be updated, but it's not like we got holes in them. They're broken. They're just not very energy efficient. But when we tried to bid them, we couldn't get anybody to go out there and do it because it's just not a big enough job. So we take that, however much it was, 20 or 30,000, and put it over here and lump it together with some money from I'll pick another one. I can't remember, from Spring Hill High School, where we're going to do some bathroom partition work, and there's a little bit of money there, and we pull those together and we go do something else. Try to do one of the two, maybe not one or the other, but we're just getting to the place where we just got little bits of money left, and really we're just going to have some more money before we get much more done. We're really even with that little bit of money left, it's about time we get another infusion of cash, or we're pretty much done on capital stuff for a while. And there's still a lot of repairs to be made, and we'll get into that in a little bit when we talk about capital budget. But if that makes sense to everyone.
That does. Any questions on the project report? Mr. Dudley?
Well, I understand what Ms. Breeding is saying there. The problem is we still got county commissioners saying there, well, you haven't spent the $3 million that we gave you last time. And so, you know, we've gotta either quit sitting on the money, for the two schools that we had, or we got to find a way of spending what's been appropriated. I know we had sort of told them this is what we would like to spend the money on, but you know, some of them are still saying, well, you're still sitting on the money, and they don't want to appropriate additional funds until we've used up what they've already give us. So I don't know what the answer is, but you know, we're in a tough situation.
Seeing no other lights, we'll move on to the two bids, parking lot projects and the bleacher repairs.
On the parking lot projects, there were parking lot repairs that were identified by EMG. And let me just say something about parking lots. We did some repaving a few years ago and addressed some, but a lot of them got deferred because for a long time, as we had limited funds, the board has always said, it sure hate to spend money on parking lots when we've got heating units that need to be fixed and roofs that need to be fixed. But let me tell you, our parking lots are getting deplorable. We've got some really bad places in parking lots, and they're not the kind of things that the only way to fix them is to fix them. And what happens is when you don't seal them over time, then they degrade and then you have to resurface them. And then when you don't resurface them over time, then they degrade and you have to mill them up and replace them. And so that's what we continue to see. We haven't sealed, so now that we're having to resurface. And we haven't resurfaced, so we're now having to mill up and replace. And that cost just keeps going up and up as you do that. There's actually about 7 or 8 schools that their needs that were identified in the first year EMG. There's some of those that there were some funds put into the first $16.5 million. Some of that was left into the rest of that, which we still don't have any funding for. Primarily the 3 schools, there were some funds for Joseph Brown Elementary, Spring Hill Elementary, and Spring Hill High School. Now, again, some of that was cut and patch this and cut and patch this, but we did hire a civil engineering firm, Civil Site Design, to look at those and all of our lots, and they kind of prioritized and said, here's the work we would recommend at 5 schools. We knew when we bid it, we weren't going to have enough money. But what we thought is, let's see what we can do and see what we can get done. So we took bids on repairs at 5 schools. Those were at Joseph Brown Elementary, Spring Hill Elementary, Mount Pleasant Elementary, Spring Hill High, and Hampshire Unit Schools. All of them are civil engineers. Now, there's some other schools. Let me tell you, Whitthorne needs some attention, Baker needs some attention, Riverside needs some attention. Those are 3 that come right off. But those are kind of in the next wave that we would do. So we put these out for bids. You can see the bids that came in were, well, let me go back up. Scan down on me real quick. Hang on just a second. Trying to read this off the screen here. We had 3 companies that bid. The low bidder on all of them was Nickel Paving, and the total for those 5 schools was $862,846.90. The high bid was $1.3 million. So we went back and said, let's just, because we really got about $160,000 we could spend on paving right now, and all the money we've got that's allocated for paving are unallocated. And so to do that, we said, let's pick the place where we feel like it's the most need. That's Joseph Brown, $150,000. So we called Nickel Brothers, or Nickel Paving, Dwight Nickel Paving. I'm going back a few years when I say Nickel Brothers, the way it used to be. And they said, we can't do just the one job. We bid on doing it all, so we just can't. We're not interested in just that one school. So we called the other 2, and they said, we're not either. So we can't get any paving done unless we can lump together a bigger paving job. I mean, it's just the contractor world we live in today. And so what I would like to do is if we can get some additional funding, maybe even before this year is out, before we get through the paving season, is go back to Nickel and say, okay, now can we tack these jobs? If we get the $2 million in our GP fund that we asked for capital, I would want to take part of that and go start attacking some of these paving things. If we got The rest of the money we asked for, you know, we showed you the three prioritized out of the 18 million, maybe the 4 million up front or the first, a lot of that includes paving. The 4 million does. We would want to attack Whitthorne, Baker and Riverside that I mentioned that are not even part of these packages. But right now, what we're going to be doing, this is on here, but we're going to pull it off for the board meeting because we don't have any money. We don't have anybody that's willing to do what little bit we got money for. So we'll be withdrawing this recommendation.
Mr. Atkinson?
What are you doing to every year? Are you putting center on these every year, or what's the plan on that?
We have not even been resealing. We're doing some striping by hand that we're painting. We're fixing potholes is basically what we're doing right now.
What would be the cost on resealing them if you had?
We have
your
looked at
maintenance could do it?
resealing, and we've got some places that we could reseal. We have been reluctant to reseal the places that we really know resealing's not going to make a difference. They really need to be repaved. But we do have some schools that need to be resealed. For instance, in the package I mentioned a while ago, Cox Middle School is one that needs to be resealed. We really need to reseal it before it gets to the place where it needs to be repaved. But when you go to some of these schools we're talking about, like Brown or Spring Hill Elementary, most of the people we've talked to say you're throwing your money away to reseal it. It's only going to last a very short time, not like you would typically expect out of it. So we haven't been doing it. Now, if the board wants us to, we could go get some resealing estimates and just look at resealing some of these lots.
To me, that's what extends the life of the asphalt.
It does.
Is resealing every year, and you wouldn't have this cost.
Yeah. And I agree, and we just haven't had a resealing program in the past. We've just not spent any money on it. Because some of these, you're still talking about, to do the resealing we do, you might need a couple of $100,000 to cross the district, but a lot of these, we need to get them fixed before we get to resealing, so.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. On the Spring Hill High School, how does this affect what the county commission is talking about, the improvement to do to Spring Hill High School?
In the, what we've looked at Spring Hill High School, in the original bid estimates we got, it did not include any repairs to the existing parking lot. It did include adding some additional parking. Now, we know if we did the work, we're gonna have to repair some, because some of it's gonna be displaced and have to be replaced. But some of this could be added if we got the funding, we could possibly try to squeeze this into that work at that time. But in our original estimates, it did not include any paving repairs.
So the number 2 for Spring Hill, that doesn't include that addition on the parking lot that they had, it does?
It did include additional parking, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, the number did include additional parking, it just didn't include the repairs and repaving that's shown here.
Okay.
And the reason is we were waiting to get these bids back before we really had a hard number on that. Now we do. And the Spring Hill High School portion of this, I mean, it's pretty sizable. It's $287,000. And we did, it's one of the last one, now it hasn't been, but in the last 5 years, we have resealed Spring Hill High School, but it's still, we tried doing a resealing, but it needs this work. Actually, and I will tell you, the school paid for it. They raised the money and paid for their own resealing. That was when Richard Callahan was still the principal, but it's been since I've been here, so I know it was in the last 5 years.
All right. Well, thank you. Sounds like we need more money for that one. Bleacher repairs.
We are doing now something that we started last year, which is a step we think in the very right direction for us, in that we are inspecting our bleachers annually. And they do require maintenance. They wear and tear. Some of them are older. We did get back estimates on some bleacher repairs that were needed. Again, this is not enough to cover all of those, but it is how much money now that we're close to the end of the year, we're starting to look at it. Do we have any funds left in our maintenance budget? And we were able to find enough to do this. And this was kind of what we prioritized out of those repairs. So there's some additional repairs that we'll need to consider when we get more funding, but this is actually using some money left in our maintenance budget that we feel like we can pull off, and these are the most needed of those bleacher repairs. So we're recommending, and these came out of the inspections that were done this year.
Mr. Atkinson?
Is a lot of this safety issues with the bleachers?
They are, I think, Mr. Hall. Dave's the one who works with those, but they are safety issues. Yes, sir.
So they definitely need to be fixed then.
Any other questions on bleacher repairs? All right, we'll move on to capital budget needs.
We placed back on the agenda the document that we gave you last meeting, which is kind of what we called our identified needs list. And we kind of didn't put it on until the board meeting agenda. It kind of came out of the discussion. And we basically gave you within the capital repairs, and it might be easier to talk about this if I could put this on the screen. If I put my hook up here, Dave, can you switch over to me for a minute? You'll need to switch. I plugged in hardline. I'm on like number, what is this, number PC 1. That's where I'm at.
All right, while they're working on that, I'm going to go ahead and go down to the revised budget amendment because that's taking some money out for that lighting.
And I'll speak to that. Well, you actually have already approved this budget amendment, but when we got to the county commission, they found a technicality in it. And so Mr. Lukonen, who's the budget director, he's included an email, advised us that we could go ahead. He read the auditors in on this, copied them on this, and nobody's objected to go ahead and make the transfer from our 141 to our 178 fund, which is basically from our undesignated fund. It's simply it's just enough from now. We'll put it back before the end of June. It's to make these payments to ESI. Now, after July 1, we'll need to do some more to continue to do that. We'll do another budget amendment for what's left, but we would be doing this transfer, let you go ahead and make the approval. All he did was added in a transfer account. In our budget amendment, we didn't use a transfer account. We went straight from the 141 to the 178, and technically you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to move it from the 141 to a transfer account to the 178, according to them, that would be an audit finding if you didn't do it that way. So we're giving back we're putting back the budget amendment back in there and taking it back to the county commission. But this is just so your approval's on it, but we are going ahead and processing as per his direction.
Okay.
We're going on the county budget. And he copied Ms. Gagliano on that, and she signed off on that as well.
Sounds good. Well, we certainly want to.
And so we put it
like
here
you guys are on
separate
top
from
of
the
that.
original budget amendments, just so you could see it, but it will go on with the regular budget amendments to be approved. And I assume we've done this right, Karen, correct, right? Okay. Going back to this, we actually, when we did this list, and I did not go back and update it, and I just realized that, we had put $1 million in as critical budget needs that we budget in the general purpose. At the budget meeting that we had with you all, the original one, we were told, well, that really needs to be $2 million, and so we've changed it to $2 million in the budget presentation. We just didn't change it here. My recommendation would be that's going to be that extra paving, about $650,000, $700,000 worth of paving, and then the rest of it. Actually, the first place that we would attack off of this blow list is bathroom fixtures at Joseph Brown Elementary. We several years, about 3 or 4 years ago, upgraded the restroom fixtures in several of our elementary schools, Baker, McDowell, Mount Pleasant Elementary, but we did in Brown, and we need new plumbing fixtures in Brown. And it's on the EMG list. It's not any, but so the paving and then in this list, this $1 million here, we've got, I know there's a boiler at, right here's how we would spend this, the $1 million here. We've got roofing repairs at Mount Pleasant Middle, Spring Hill High School, and Santa Fe. We've got a boiler at Riverside Elementary, fire alarm at Culleoka, painting. Our schools that are scheduled to be painting in 2019, we've already got the funds for 18. This would be for the summer of 19, would be Joseph Brown, Marvin Wright, Mount Pleasant Elementary, Hampshire. And then we would recommend putting some money to buy some furnishings. our schools, some of the schools are desperately in need of some new furnishings. We actually would double that if we got $2 million. We'd want to get $100,000. I've got several requests out on my desk. We'd work with our administrators and try to do everything we could. That's probably not enough, but that would be a start, because we haven't given them any money to buy furnishings now for 2 or 3 years. You know, about 2 or 3 years ago, we had some money left over in our utility budget, and we bought some new chairs for Baker, some new cafeteria furniture at Mount Pleasant High School, and some new cafeteria furniture at Cox. So that's the last 3 schools, other than new schools, that we've really bought. So we'd like to do some more furnishing. So that's how we'd suggest the $2 million. The remaining amount, the total $18 million there, is all from that identified needs from the EMG. That's from year 1, year 2, year 3, because we're now into year 3 of that list, and that's kind of how we prioritize those, thinking if we couldn't get the whole 18, man, if we could get 5, that'd be a great start. That's kind of the top priority. If we get 8, we'd work on the first 2, and then if we got it all, we'd do everything. And then, so that's repairs, which we definitely need to address. I know it seems like when we talk to the county commission anymore, that's all talk about new school costs, but we still got a lot of repairs to do at the existing schools because we haven't caught up yet. Now, once we catch up, we might can take some money in the general purpose budget. I don't know that 2 will be enough. The MG list indicates that's closer to about $4 million a year that we need an annual, that we're just going to have to expect in things that break annually. When you look at the size of all of our facilities, what we've got between all the things we've got, probably about $4 million a year. If we had everything fixed, would keep us going year after year. But we haven't caught up. But then, but past that, there are some new facility needs. I put on here 3 that have been mentioned. And again, the first 2 have been discussed quite a bit, and those are numbers that we actually had our building team with Hewlett Spencer and our architect go out and put together some preliminary budgets. I'm sure Mr. Hewlett would assure you these are not hard numbers because they haven't been bid, but they were budgets, they're estimates that have been put together, and we showed you both the estimated cost and if you wanted to, if we just had the money, if I know there's been some talk in the commission, bring us a GMP for this. Well, the only way we can get to a GMP is spend that design cost. Now, the design cost is included in the estimated budget. Now, the third one of those, the Mount Pleasant Middle School, that comes straight out of that 10-year plan. It has briefly been mentioned, but not really discussed by the board. So I'm not in any way bringing that as a recommendation, just that was kind of the next thing on the list. The number on it is simply taking a square footage. The square footage, we took the number from the 10-year plan, took their square footage, but updated it based on today's costs that we're seeing. There are some other things that have been mentioned that we didn't add to the list that maybe we should. One of the things at Santa Fe, they've asked for funding for an auxiliary gym. We didn't put that on there. At Culleoka, they've asked for funding for a Project Lead the Way lab. We didn't put that on there. Those are some additional things that are facilities kind of things that have been brought forward by administrators, but we haven't added those kind of things on there. Santa Fe also, there's some requests to redo the softball field. I don't know if you know about that one, but so the auxiliary gym and softball, but those aren't on there because again, we're trying to do the kind of what's the latest. Yes, sir.
Mr. Atkinson?
Was a softball field, you talking about the lighting issue? I think that's what it's.
That is correct, yeah. We haven't even got into that with the school board.
Yeah, because it's out of compliance because.
Well, let me say this, not all, let's talk about it this way, if we can. Not all of our school ball fields have lighting. Over the last few years, we've been able to add some, but there are still some to go. Unfortunately, many of those are softball fields. Culleoka doesn't have lights on the softball field. Santa Fe, because they moved the softball field several years ago, doesn't have lights on the softball field. Cox doesn't have lights on the softball field. So those need to be addressed as well. And as there are potential issues with that. And I don't know, I'm trying to skirt around that a little bit, Dr. Marzak, but there are potential issues with that we might need to consider.
well, not knowing what all those potential issues are, it's kind of hard to, make decisions on some of this stuff. But I kind of get the gist of what you're saying. It's all taped, Mr. Reed, so
It
I
is.
don't know that you can get around it. But I think that we do have to
Plant seeds in anybody's minds.
Understood. I think, though, it may be beneficial for us to look at least what some of those costs would be in order to kind of work on composing this.
Yeah, and we can get you some of those additional costs. Like, for instance, on softball fields, we know that for lights, you're looking at somewhere around $150,000, $175,000 a field, based on lights we've put up lately.
Mr. Dudley?
With us bumping our request up for maintenance to $2 million, are we making progress in eating away at that elephant, or are we just falling further behind?
$2 million is certainly needed, and I think what it does is it starts to build a precedent for having money in the budget to do with that. But it is certainly not enough money to address the issue. We are still falling behind if we only do $2 million. Unless we get some additional capital funds through the capital funding budget of the county commission, I think we'll continue to fall behind, because I don't think we can, I think to make a serious impact this year, we need a minimum of probably $6 to $8 million.
Knowing that, and I know it's a guess, but how many years before we're right back in the same boat we were in 2 and 3 years ago?
Not many. Probably, the one thing that we've done is we have done a good job of upgrading our heat and air. I've shared with you that used to be a huge issue for us, and right now we really do have that good. Now those you'll continue to have to replace things. We've got, I mentioned the Riverside boiler, which is now won't fire all the time. You can't buy parts for it anymore because it's just so old. We got the same thing at Highland Park. We're gonna, that boiler's getting old. We've got, it's not in too bad a shape, but Culleoka has a cooling tower. Those things have a 15-year life. It was put in 2005. 15 to 18-year life is about all you get out of those. That's $150,000 replacement. That's one that we haven't replaced. So, that's coming down the road. So you're going to continue to have those kind of things. But heat and air right now, we're in pretty good shape. Roofs, we still got a little way. We've made a big stride on roofs. Our major roof problems right now that need to be addressed, there are repairs that need to be made at Mount Pleasant Middle. Spring Hill High School is going to have minimum of repairs, but at some point it's going to have a new roof. We've got some pretty serious roof issues that need to be addressed at both Santa Fe and Hampshire. Those are 2 schools that the roofs are in deteriorate. Not all of the roof, but portions of the roof at those 2 schools that need to be replaced. Some of it's been replaced and some of it hasn't. Those are kind of your big ticket items. Yeah. Past that, you get into things like paving, which again doesn't have to be done, but it sure just continues to mount up. After that, we're getting into things like ceiling tile. Do you want to walk through a building and see cracked and busted ceiling tile? I mean floor tile, ceiling tile or floor tile. I was actually thinking floor tile and said ceiling tile. Floor tile. Ceiling tile we've been trying to replace internally. There's still a lot of rooms and you walk in, you see the curled up ceiling tile, and those, you start to lose a lot of your heat out of those rooms because that's actually an insulator for your classroom because the heat goes up past it if the corners are curled up. We've got windows. The windows, some of them aren't functional anymore. Not that they necessarily have to be, but most of them are old single pane windows that we would be much better served in those classrooms if we had double pane windows. So those are some issues that are pretty big. The other thing that will continue to fail is fire alarms. Those things seem to have a 12 to 15-year life, and they're a $75,000 to $100,000 replacement cost. I don't know. I'm going way past your question, I think, but just to tell you that if we wanted to get everything totally fixed, you're looking at $18 million to address ceiling tile and floor tile and all those sorts of things. But we can keep the buildings very inhabitable by making the repairs. But we still got some ways to go. We got some schools that need some work still.
Now, we've spent a fortune, the past 11 years, we've spent a fortune on roof repairs. Are we still getting, when one is under warranty, are we trying to get warranty coverage and now on them?
We've got a few that we've struggled with that a little bit on. I know we've got one manufacturer that we did some roof work with that we've got them to come back and do some repairs, but we've struggled getting it just totally. And I don't mind telling you that roof manufacturer, Sarnafield, the roof at Spring Hill Elementary. We've now, part of it, there's some discoloration there. They just say it is what it is. I mean, it's just ugly. It's turned gray and it's supposed to be blue, and they've talked about trying to wash it and do those sort of things, but we've not got anybody to help us do that. But then there's some leak problems, and I don't know.
Hope you remember not to bid out rubber roofs anymore.
Yes, sir.
I know that was SSOE's idea.
And we put one on Spring Hill Middle, put one on Riverside, and we put one on Highland Park. And the ones at Riverside and Highland Park, because of the colors, haven't faded and look near as bad as the one at Spring Hill Elementary. But it's we basically laid a rubber roof on top of a metal roof and tried to make it look like a metal roof. It's just the color there just didn't hold up very well. But there are still some leak issues that we continue to fight. We've got most of them under control. But for the most part, we're getting response to one of the things. We moved to a PVC type roof, and that was kind of I don't know, that happened before my time. That's what we were doing when we got here. We're starting to experience not as good of service out of those roofs as we expected. You have a lot of shrinkage on those. We saw it at Mount Pleasant High School, which we did some repairs. We're seeing it at Hampshire. We saw it at Central. That actually some of that roof was fixed on the vocational building as part of the construction project. But that roof starts shrinking and it starts drawing up, and it takes the fascia boards and pull them up on the sides where the roof. So we're not happy with that PVC product. It's still warranted, and we're still working. In some cases it's warranted. In some cases it's out of warranty. We've moved back. We're very happy with this roof engineering company. We just used Rinks Roofing, who oversaw the roofing projects for Whitthorne, Culleoka, and the repairs at Woodard. Let me tell you, those guys are first rate. They're out there popping the whip on those guys. They actually do what engineers and architects are supposed to do when they do contract administration. They go out there and supervise that the product's put on the way that it was designed to be put on. And we're going back to an EPDM roof that they recommended, which we feel like is going to be more serviceable. And we're putting that roof on the new schools. Now, I'll tell you, at Central High School, it has a PVC roof, because that was kind of what 3 or 4 years ago when that was designed, that was our mode of operation. But we've just started to see we're not as happy with the service out of those roofs.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry to get into technical roof jargon too, but lingo. I know some people are not as.
I just like for you to go back to the paving issue. Just like for you to look at how much cost estimate will be for yearly
Ceiling?
Yeah, yearly ceiling, and it might be a summer project for
Okay.
the kids or something, because it's not really that hard to put down.
Right.
So
We will investigate that. Thank you.
Sorry, I don't know that we're gonna reach any conclusions for the board meeting. So I guess, do you want it to stay on there or just continue to have this discussion at upcoming budget?
Yes, at some point, you all have to take a capital budget request to the county commission with the general purpose.
Right.
And I guess, we can certainly do a priority list, but I don't, we put the 40, by the way, the 40 million, it's on their agenda for the admin committee meeting for Thursday night. If anybody can be there to speak to that, yes. And I will tell you that Dr. Marzak is going to be there, but I have another commitment. I cannot be there this Thursday. I rarely miss, but this is one I just have to miss. And I told Dr. Marzak the other day I would not be able to be there for Thursday night.
I think Benny and I both did.
But that's back on the agenda, and we put the motion just exactly like you all made it. Just so we didn't put anything else. We just sent that back to them. But I don't know what number you all feel comfortable with, but you give us a number and we can prioritize to it. But I don't know,
I will tell you that from the conversations I've had with the budget chair, he has told me that they have about 17 million to give us, or 17 that they would feel comfortable allocating to us. Anything over that, it's a no-go with him. Now, that may not be a no-go with the rest of the commission, but that, you know, I think he can drive that ship somewhat. So I don't know that we're going to get where we need to on some of these new buildings at this point with this particular commission, with it being an election year. We can keep asking for 40, but we're probably going to keep getting no's. I do think that it would be helpful to have some idea of a 17 million type number, how you think that should be spent, and then also looking at some of these other potential issues that we might have out there that we haven't thought about, even out of this.
What are you saying? Like, if they give us 17 million, then it comes back to us to decide how we're gonna spend it? Is that what you're saying? Or I thought we
think
said
that they will
McDowell-
probably want to have a list from us as far as what we're planning on using it on, just like we did the last time with EMG. I mean, they're not even wanting to let us build McDowell without giving them plans. So I think we may want to consider maybe out of that 17 million, maybe allocating some money for architect fees and things like that, but then also look at these repairs are the things that can get done probably in the next year or two.
But you couldn't build McDowell at all.
Mr. Dudley?
Thank you. Well, as I've stated many a time, I think we've got several commissioners that are overstepping their bounds. We asked them for a specific amount of money that it would take to fulfill our needs. The design and all of the schools is up to us. And whether we have plans drawn or not, they don't need to be involved in that. Like I say, we asked for 17 for McDowell, then they should provide the 17, and then it's up to us to work with Mr. Spencer and the other parties to get that school built. And so I wish some of the county commissioners would just stay with their department of providing the funding and let us take care of building the schools and maintaining them.
Well, I don't disagree with you, Mr. Dudley, and I think with where we are on Thursday night, I mean, I think it would probably be premature to try to come up with anything at this point with what we've been provided from a capital needs tonight. Mr. Atkinson?
Are you asking if they come back with an offer, we've got 17 million to give you, well, how are you gonna spend it? Is that what you're asking?
That's essentially what I'm
list?
saying. I don't
Okay.
want them to say we have 17 million to give you, but we're not going to give you anything because you guys didn't have things to spend it on. They know we have things to spend it on, but
I mean, seem like we've got a pretty good priority list right there, but if they wanna come back with so much money, I mean, I'm not gonna spend it all on Spring Hill High School. I'm gonna divide, in my opinion, I would divide it out amongst what needs are, and what needs to be fixed. Then maybe save a little bit back for, I hate to say it, but if we need more space, I mean, we might have to bring in some trotters for classrooms for Spring Hill, something like that. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of.
I believe they're called learning cottages.
Is that what they call learning cottages?
That's what they call them across the county line.
Oh.
And I will just tell you that the immediate need at Spring Hill High School is not classroom space.
Yeah.
It's cafeteria space.
Yeah, I would probably spend
and-
some money on cafeteria space.
And so that's the challenge there. The challenge at McDowell is it's not a new wing, it's a new school. You know, and I mean, those conditions are not gonna improve until we get one. But you can't do that and do any of these other things for $17 million. So it's very challenging. And I know that's the challenge they face and you all face. I'll throw this in. I'm gonna overstep my bounds right now, but this continues to eat at me. I, like most of you all, I got my new tax appraisal last week. Mine went up 35%. That ought to generate some more tax revenue for something. I don't mind paying it if they'll spend it on, if they'll give it to the schools and the people who need it, but if we're gonna pay more taxes but not get any more money, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't know about you all, but if they're not gonna spend it, if they're gonna let schools have it, then just cut my taxes and let me keep my money. I totally overstepped my bounds, so I won't say anymore.
Yes. All right, well, we talked about, unless there's anything else to add on the capital budget, we'll move on. And we talked about the lighting upgrade loan, and I think we can just add that to consent unless anybody objects, which will leave us to talk about protective cases for the second wave of diploma. Anybody got any objections to that?
No.
I think we kind of have to have them.
Yeah, we
So
gotta have them.
we can move that to consent, and then I believe we are complete.
Switch back, if you would, please, Dave.
Look what time it is. We can go
Anything else from any board members? Seeing no lights, we can adjourn. Thank y'all. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hold on. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Under the executive approvals, we had approved the Nashville Wheelers or something to utilize Cullioca ball fields, and it's all fees waived. Is this particular group making any contributions to our system? Yeah. And then when we're make the statement that all fees are waived, what about our insurance requirements? Are we still requiring any of these people to have insurance?
They always have to provide us with a certificate of insurance.
Okay.
Fees are waived based on the recommendation of the building administrator. They're the ones who make those recommendations. They typically will do that for organizations that are involved in their community. Without going back and looking at it, I'm sorry, I don't remember who the Nashville Cruisers are, or what they were using the softball field for.
And Mr. Dudley, I'll just say that, as those have come through, and I've talked with Mr. Breeden about that, as far as, a lot of it is principle driven as far as the waiving the fees and whatnot. And, the program that we saw them present at the last work session, Mr. Breeden's hoping that based on the information that we're gonna get from that program, we can set up more clear, because it's very difficult for me when I go in there to try to approve things on an executive level, because I don't know why we approve, I have the same questions that you have. And I think with this new system, Mr. Breeden's hoping that we'll be able to track more, what is walking out the door and why is it walking out the door, so that we can have that company come back and help us set up more clear procedures
And
for that.
that's what I'm hoping for, because
Me too.
we still have a certain amount of maintenance required, depending on what happens when they're using the field. Some of them can use it for one period, and the whole field will be a total mess, and then our staff and students and coaches have to go and try and straighten it back up without any contributions to our programs at all. And so, I'm hoping we can set a set of standards, and especially groups that are not even tied to the local community.
Mr. Beaver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In talking with Ms. Love earlier tonight about the Nashville Cruisers, She said it'd just be a temporary, that because they're currently practicing or playing on Mount Pleasant ball field. And they just wanna use Culleoka when they can't get onto Mount Pleasant. So I don't know what kind of deal Mount Pleasant and the Nashville, Cruisers have, but that's what she told me about it.